I'm going to take a look at the OCR AS Macro paper from 2017. So I'm just going to look at the multiple choice questions. So which would not be included in national income figures? Well, this sort of question comes up quite a lot, and the thing that's not included in national income figures is transfer payments. Transfer payments are when money has been given but there's no work done, so there's no associated output. So unemployment benefits are an example of where people receive money but they're not doing any work for that money. Number 2, which factor would be most likely to lead to an increase in the size of the labour force? So we're looking at what would cause there to be a bigger workforce. And inward migration, i.e. more workers entering the country, is going to be an example of that. The other factors are going to mean that people are less inclined to work. So for example, an increase in employment benefits means if people get more money for doing nothing, they're less likely to want to work. A reduction in the retirement age, again, you're going to have fewer people working. Number 3, in which circumstance will structural unemployment arise? Now, structural unemployment is where workers are no longer needed usually because the industry's closed down. So, for example, coal mining closing down led to lots of structural unemployment. So if we have a look through these, a bricklayer leaves employment voluntarily, nothing's closed down there. Construction worker is laid off during a period of bad weather, that will probably come under seasonal. An increase in the base rate of interest reduces demand for all goods, that would be more cyclical. So automation results in factory workers being made redundant. So those factory workers are no longer needed. So now machinery is taking over their jobs, they are no longer needed. So D is the correct answer. Injection into a circular flow, well, you've got 3 injections into the circular flow, 3 withdrawals. Your injections are exports, investment and government spending. Your withdrawals are imports, saving and taxation. So of these ones here are your injections, so exports will be your correct answer. Right, I've got a calculation question here, and in order to do this you need to know the formula for the multiplier. So the formula is 1 over marginal propensity to import plus marginal propensity to save plus marginal propensity to tax. So with any questions to do with formulas, you put into the formula what you know, and then you can figure out the thing that you don't know. So we've been told the multiplier is 2.5. K is your multiplier, so that's going to be 2.5 equals 1 over tax is 0.1, save is 0.1. So 0.1 plus 0.1 plus MPM. So that leads us to 2.5 equals 1 over 0.2 plus MPM. Run out of space there. So then we need to say we can say 2.5 times by, so that's in brackets, times by 0.2 plus MPM equals 1. So I'm doing this in quite a lot of steps here. So then we've got, in fact we could have just swapped those over, couldn't we? So then we've got, leave this over here, so 0.2 plus MPM equals 1 over 2.5. So then if we get our calculator out and we do 1 divided by 2.5, that gives us 0.4. So we've got 0.2 plus MPM equals 0.4. So MPM is going to be 0.2. So that's number 5. Number 6, what will cause the public sector net cash requirement in the UK to decrease in the short run? So the public sector net cash requirement is the difference between government spending and taxation. If the government overspends in a tax year, then the amount that they've overspent by is what we call the public sector net cash requirement. So if we have a look at our options here, A says more workers paying the higher rates of income tax. So we're actually talking about the public sector net cash requirement decreasing. So if more workers are paying the high rate of income tax, we're going to have more tax. So that's actually going to reduce the public sector net cash requirement because the government's now getting in more money. So there's hopefully going to be a smaller difference between government spending and taxation. Number 7, the Monetary Policy Committee decides to raise interest rates. So what's going to happen to investment and what's going to happen to the exchange rate? Well, if interest rates go up, then that means it's more expensive to borrow, so there's going to be less investment. So it's going to be A or B. The next one is if we increase interest rates, then what's going to happen is if we think about the supply and demand for the currency, for the pound, if interest rates increase, more people will want to put their money into UK banks. We get hot money flows into UK banks, and that's going to lead to an increase in the value of the pound. An increase is known as appreciate. So that means that the answer is going to be A. Which is a supply side policy measure? Well, supply side policies are all about policies to shift the long and average supply curve to the right. So it's about increasing productivity. So what's going to increase productivity of those things here? It's going to be deregulation. It's removing rules about who can compete in industries. It's going to improve efficiency. Number 9, so this is where we're looking at index prices. And when we talk about index numbers, what we're doing is we pick a base year, and this year here, year 1 is the base year, and in the base year, all the numbers are made equal to 100. So year 2, we go from 100 to 106, so that means that the prices have gone up by 6%. 100 to 111, prices have gone up by 11%. So this question is about terms of trade. So the formula for terms of trade is the index of export prices over the index of import prices. So the question is saying in which year is there a most favourable? When it says favourable, it means terms of trade has increased. So we need to look at these numbers here and think in which of those do we have the biggest terms of trade. So 100 divided by 100 is going to give us 1. 106 divided by 111 is going to be less than 1. 108 divided by 111 is going to be less than 1. 118 divided by 114 is going to be bigger than 1. So we can do that without actually needing to get our calculator out. So year 4, so D is the correct answer. Right, number 10, a government may reduce the national minimum wage in order to. So reducing the minimum wage is going to cut cost of production for firms. It's going to make firms' cost of production lower, and they may want to do that to help firms become more competitive with international firms. Number 11, we're shifting the aggregate supply curve to the left. That usually happens when there's an increase in cost of production. So if we have a look at these options here, the first, the fall in the money supply, well, if there's less money in circulation, there's going to be less demand. That's a demand factor. Fall in the rate of interest, again, that's going to reduce demand. A rise in government spending is going to increase demand. A fall in interest rate is going to increase demand, isn't it? And a rise in wages is going to increase cost of production, so that's going to shift your aggregate supply to the left because costs of production have gone up. Right, so now we've got production possibility curve, sometimes called production possibility frontier. That's why they've put an F there. So we've got 2 countries here, country X, country Y. Country X, you can see, is best at producing both goods. If a country is best at producing a particular good, it says that they have an absolute advantage. Now, because country X is best at producing both goods, they have an absolute advantage in sofas, and they also have an absolute advantage in TVs. So C and D is suggesting Y has the absolute advantage, so they are not correct. So which one does it have a comparative advantage in? A country can only have a comparative advantage in one good. So it's the one that they are comparatively better at. Now we can do this without actually needing to do any calculation because we can see quite clearly from the graph. So if we look at country Y is only sort of a little bit worse at TVs than country X, but country Y is significantly worse at sofas. When it comes to sofas, they can only do half of what country Y can do. But when it comes to TVs, they can do 3/4. So country Y is not quite so bad at TVs. So country Y should focus on TVs and country X should focus on sofas. So that means country X has a comparative advantage in sofas. Right, number 13. Which of the following will increase the size of the current account deficit? So the current account deficit is all about exports and imports. So we need to think about what's going to increase the size. So if the size is increasing, that means that exports are falling or imports are increasing. So an increase in loans by UK banks to Polish firms, well, that's not the current account, that's the capital account. So it's not that one. An increase in the number of French tourists taking UK holidays, well, that's actually going to increase exports because that's going to be money coming into the UK. An increase in UK foreign direct investment to the UK, well, that could be considered to possibly be an answer, but the reason that's not an answer is because foreign direct investment is on the capital account. So we're left with foreign aid to Ethiopia. So UK is giving money to Ethiopia, so that's money leaving the country. So that's going to be increased imports, and that's going to therefore worsen the deficit. At number 14, a country experiences a decline in exports and imports. So exports are falling and imports are also falling. So what's likely to have caused this to happen? Well, if you have a change in the exchange rate, what's going to happen, depending upon which way it goes, you're going to get an increase in one and a decrease in the other. In this example, we've got both falling, so it can't be this one here. Part B, a decrease in the extent to which the country specialises. Now, we have lots of trade because countries specialise in what they are best at. If they don't specialise as much, there's going to be less trade. That means there's going to be less exports and also less imports. So B is the correct answer. And then finally, question 15, we've got an exchange rate question here. So the exchange rate needs to be kept at ER, but what's happened is it's been forced up because demand for the currency has increased. So it's saying what policy should be pursued to maintain the fixed exchange rate. So what they need to do is they need a policy that's going to reduce the demand for pounds, or you could have a policy that's going to increase the supply. So we could increase the supply. Doesn't matter which. So if you reduce domestic interest rates, what's going to happen is people are going to remove their money from UK banks and put their money elsewhere. So that's going to increase the supply of pounds, which is then going to reduce the exchange rate back to where it was.